This is WorkSpan TV. I'm Ryanjohnson from WorldatWork. I'm joined in the studio today by Steve Harris from Frederic W. Cook & Company, and we're talking about trends in compensation committees and where compensation committees have been and where they're going. Steve, there's been quite an evolution in the last 5 to 10 years in compensation committees. I wonder if you'd just take a minute and talk about some of the changes that you've seen in your practice.
Well, compensation committees today, I think, have a much harder job than they did certainly 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The role has changed pretty dramatically. I mean, if we go back even further than 10 years, we can find a time when compensation committee members were not necessarily the top tier of the board members. There might be, certainly well-intentioned individuals, but not the ones that were, kind of the cream of the board. And today, it's just the opposite. The role of a compensation committee member is intense. There's a lot of scrutiny on their decisions. They're concerned about the optics, impressions of what they're doing, about getting it right, linking pay and performance. It's a hard job, and it takes a lot of time to do it right. And I hear their concerns because I sit with them not just in regular meetings, but in their executive sessions just with the committee, and I understand some of their concerns. And there are a lot more today than there were 5, 10, or more years ago.
What have you observed, Steve, in how they interact with management today versus maybe 5 or 10 years ago?
Compensation committees, because of those things that I just mentioned, are asking more questions. They want more information. They want that from people like me, advisors to the committees. They want that information from management. And sometimes management wonders whether they're really being trusted. And I don't think generally it's an issue of trust. I think just it's an issue of wanting to be fully informed, so the decisions that they make are informed decisions. They're doing their job with their eyes wide open. And that can be a little bit different for management that is accustomed to the committee members listening to what they're saying and recommending and going along with that. And it's not quite so easy today.
We've also had a lot of regulatory changes, and not just things that have come out of Congress, but some of the exchanges have created new rules in the last 5 or 10 years. So, the burden on these folks who are in the comp committee, it seems to me, has gotten more substantial in terms of, the sign-off and all the requirements that they need. Is that an accurate assessment?
Oh, it's very accurate, and it's affected some industries more than others, but it's affected business broadly. Financial services has been hit very hard, of course, with all the regulations related to Dodd-Frank, related to Federal Reserve and other governing bodies, regulatory bodies that are interested in what's happening there. But it's affected companies large and small. I think it's a pendulum that you could argue swung too far one way and now is swinging too far the other way. And it's taking up a lot of time and attention. And one of my concerns is that time and attention being spent on the regulatory side, even though certainly some portion of that is necessary and good, is taking away from the time that boards and management should be spending on more of the strategic aspects of the business and how compensation design and delivery can help to link to and drive those business aspects that are so important. And that's not discussed sometimes enough because of the regulatory focus.
I know you work with a number of companies, a number of the very best companies in the world even. Talk about how the really good companies or the really good compensation committees work and how they interact with management.
Well, first of all, I think they're just wonderfully talented, insightful people on compensation committees that I've had the privilege of working with in various size companies, and certainly in the larger organizations, the Fortune 500, Fortune 100, the Dow companies. You have committees comprised of sometimes sitting CEOs, former CEOs, individuals that were very prominent in their field. Maybe they're retired, maybe they're not quite retired yet, but they all come in with an orientation that's helpful, an inherent questioning and curiosity, which is good. And that's one of the reasons why I mentioned earlier that they want more and more information from management and from their advisors. But they try to make sure that they're turning each issue, looking at each side of an issue and doing that in a way that is helpful to management, in my experience, and helpful to the decision-making process. So they're not in any way trying to get in the way. Yes, they're trying to make sure that the unintended consequences of decisions or programs, processes are thought of, but they're trying to use their experience to help management and the decision-making process be richer as a result of that.
So given where we've just been in the last handful of years, or maybe going back 10 years, what are you seeing on the horizon in the next 12, 18, maybe 24 months in terms of how comp committees are going to interact? Any changes that you're seeing that are going to be important?
Well, we're going to, I'm afraid, continue to have a challenging economy. That's going to, I think, continue to create some challenges for share valuations. So shareholders will likely see continued volatility, and the equity compensation that participants receive will likely have, in some cases, questionable value. And I think the pressures to perform, and companies by and large are doing very well. If you look at their top line and their earnings, you look at the amount of cash that they've been able to generate, they're doing quite well, but it's not translating really into confidence. Over the next year or 2 years, that confidence question will still be there. The jobs question will still be there. And I think it's going to factor its way into incentive compensation and decisions on what should we be doing in light of the environment, the backdrop that we're making these decisions in. We have people who are out of work. We have people who are really struggling in a lot of ways in the economy and in the various companies. And so I think that broader context will inevitably factor into some of the decision making and some of the compensation designs that we see.
Well, Steve, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing some insights on successful compensation committees. And for WorldatWork and WorkSpan TV, I'm Ryanjohnson.